going to start off by saying, not talking about smoking for a minute, but you might be familiar with this saying, the lottery is a tax on stupidity. This has been attributed to many people, from Voltaire through to Adam Smith, the economist. And the reason I'm saying that is because you could rephrase that and say that excise duty on tobacco is a tax on self-harm. And once you phrase it that way, you realize that smokers probably are deserving more of support rather than punitive measures. Especially when you think back on what has been said by Professor Hastings, is that these people have been got at an early age when they're very vulnerable. And so, as I say, I think that they are in need of our support rather than increasingly punitive measures only. And just finally, to end with the quotes, smoking is one of the leading causes of all statistics. One can only surmise that Lisa Minnelli was a smoker, otherwise she wouldn't have taken any interest in this whatsoever. So, as we know, cigarette smoking, it's the only, I can think of nothing else that's widely available, that's legal, that is sort of socially acceptable. It has no beneficial effects whatsoever, and when I say no, I mean it has absolutely no beneficial effects whatsoever, but it has lots of negative effects. So, given the fact that it's widely available, it's hardly surprising that a proportion of our pregnant population smoke, despite the following. Growth retardation, we know, and on average, if you are a smoker, your baby will weigh about 200 grams less than if you're a non-smoker, maybe a little bit less. It will also make your baby's head smaller, make your baby's brain smaller, and it'll make your baby's limbs a little bit smaller as well. This is well documented, and there's very good evidence for it. Placental abruption is where the placenta prematurely separates, you get a bleed, and it has a very adverse outcome on the baby and sometimes for the mother as well. Evidence is that this is twice as common if you're a smoker than if you're a non-smoker. Pre-labor premature rupture of the membranes, which exposes the baby to infection in the uterus and to premature delivery, is much more common if you are a heavy smoker. Heavy is 20 cigarettes or more. It doesn't appear to be a risk factor if you're a light smoker. We know that if you are born to a mother who smokes, your chance of dying of sudden infant death syndrome is considerably increased, and that your subsequent chances of getting asthma are increased also. And we also know that if you are a teenage boy whose mother smoked when you were pregnant, you have a less good ability to achieve your maximum exercise tolerance. So the harm that it doesn't end as soon as you're out of the uterus. The effect that smoking has on you if you're in the uterus will live with you as long as you are there. Congenital malformation, there's a small increase in some congenital heart defects. It's a fairly consistent, but heart defects are not that common, and a small increase doesn't necessarily make a hugely compelling argument compared against the very other things. There is a linear association with the number of cigarettes that you smoke and miscarriage. And if you smoke 40 cigarettes a day, your chance of suffering a miscarriage are twice that of the general population. Every cigarette that you smoke increases your chance of a miscarriage. And finally, stillbirth. Your chance of having a baby that is stillborn is increased 50% if you smoke. Now, that's all the obvious things to say, but all of these things must be borne in mind that smoking in pregnancy is not usually a very simple matter to consider. There's an intergenerational pattern, and we have seen that there with the family that spoke to us there. There's the effects of genetics. Am I, by my genetic makeup, more prone to addiction? is my mother smoking altering my environment so that when I'm born, am I more prone to being addicted? There's social influences, which are numerous, and of course there's educational status. As well as that, there is of course employment status. I mean, how many young female solicitors do we know who cycle to work equal and eat very healthily? How many of those would smoke? So smoking on its own in pregnancy is seldom the only issue. It's very much mixed up with everything else. Then again, there's the influence of your parents, and finally, there's well-documented evidence that if you try to give up smoking when you're pregnant and your partner smokes, it is much, much more difficult. So there are all the adverse effects of pregnancy. There is a very wide range of literature which I could give anybody who's interested that shows all of these things. These are not just sort of whimsical things. We have known them for at least 50 years, and the effect that nicotine has on the fetus directly was shown on it had effect on the fetal heart rate. It decreased beat-to-beat variability, and it happens within minutes of starting to smoke. It was shown as long ago as 1984. So there's nothing new about any of this. So the message is extremely clear. If you are pregnant or thinking of getting pregnant, please don't smoke. Thank you.